Welcome to a very special pre-show. We are back in the Tumblr House Tower. I don't know if we've ever done this for a pre-show before, Charles.
I don't think so.
Wow.
I don't think so. And, you can't see it, but suffice to say, they have dusted off the entire studio, which I am reliably informed when I got here this morning. I was reliably informed there were 3 solid inches of dust over everything. But not anymore.
Nope.
See, if I had a white glove, we would still be impressed.
Very good, Charles. Okay.
That's true.
Yeah.
And you know what? This isn't just the pre-show. This is the pre-show to the 200th anniversary. The 200th show.
It's unbelievable. 200. It went by in a blink.
It was in 5 years? 4 years?
Less than 4 years, because we started... Our first episode was like June 2016. So yeah, wow, that's 5, gosh. And then we started later in the fall, I guess. And we started regularly, I think, in fall.
So it's 5 years in the making.
Yeah, 5 years.
Gosh.
Wow.
200th episode, ladies and gentlemen. This is like our bicentennial. In fact, those of you who are old enough to remember, which is a small number of you, but those of you who can, will remember in the 1970s we had the bicentennial minutes on CBS.
What is that?
Well, the bicentennial minute would be, because remember it's the bicentennial of the country. So for a minute, CBS, instead of having people hawking shampoo or dead dogs or whatever they were selling, there would be a minute of Revolutionary War factoid.
So that was in, what year was that?
1976.
So we're actually coming up on 250 in 26. So I wonder if stuff is going to happen.
Well, I'm sure it will. The overthrow of the government, bombs everywhere. Celebrate the 250th anniversary of independence by declaring independence. Though from what, we don't know. We met the enemy and he is us, as Pogo Possum put it so well.
Every man a king.
But no one wears a crown. They just get crowned with stuff.
Okay, so, all right. I don't know. Where should we take this? There's so many different directions. We have announcements. Would you like to say how you're doing?
Well, I would. There are some important announcements. Firstly, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to make this announcement because he's embarrassed to.
Okay.
I don't mind starting the ball rolling on this.
Okay, whatever.
Ladies and gentlemen, Don Vincenzo has made me a very happy man. It's true. How do I put this? My little boy is all grown up. Squirt, squirt. He's bringing a hen home to nest. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Vinny is getting married. And he has done me the honor of being his best man. The other candidates all had more important things to do. One was in jail. Anyway, the point is that, one particularly close person in the family is doing time on a federal gun running charge, but they assure me he's going to win on appeal.
Good.
They'd hoped he'd be out in time for the... Well, never mind. Anyway, seriously speaking, ladies and gentlemen, he was getting married, but to show how unwoke he is, the bride is a woman. I know, and this is in the immediate wake of Pride Month. I'm sorry. But what?
It's true. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, see? You're basically insulting the direction the West is going in. And your bride's even worse. She's marrying a guy.
I guess so, yeah.
However, having said all of that, I know a lot of you are going to be immediately curious as to what sort of ceremony it's going to be. Tridentine, Byzantine, Novus Ordo, Armenian, Anglican Ordinariate. Let me set your worries at rest. It's happening at the Wee Wedding Chapel of the Flowers in Las Vegas. The Reverend Orlando Leroy Jones West will be presiding. And it will be an Elvis impersonator wedding. Not, mind you, that only the Reverend Jones West will be dressed as Elvis. All of us will be, including the bride. We're all going to be late Elvis. Late Elvis. In other words, we're all wearing the jumpsuits, not the other stuff. This is a little unorthodox. It's a little different, but it's also not true. However, seriously, he is getting married to a lovely girl whose name he can reveal if he wants to. I don't want to because of counterculture. Cancel culture.
Cancel culture.
Yeah.
Her name's Gina.
It is Gina.
Yeah. So?
I'm not going to tell the last name, though.
Okay. Yeah, Franchini.
It is now, or will be. It will be after next week. However, there's a downside to their getting married next week, or the week after, 2 weeks hence, on the 17th. The downside is that we're going to have to take a little break. They're doing a round-the-world honeymoon, so we're going to be able to start filming again in June of 23.
June, 23. I mean, give or take a month.
Yeah.
So.
No, it'll be sooner than that. But we will be taking a break so that they can, A, go through the preliminaries of getting married, B, actually get married, and C, recover from the experience. Go on the honeymoon. Oh, never mind. You know what's funny, though, that I've found I've been a best man 18 times with this. And you know what I've noticed about the funny thing about weddings?
What?
As you get closer to the date, and you'll find this especially now over the next 2 weeks, everything in your life becomes about the wedding. Everything.
Yeah.
The whole thing. Whether you're going to have a chicken salad or a bowl of mushroom soup for lunch on a given day is done with the wedding in mind.
Yeah.
So it's all about the wedding. Then the wedding comes. It's done. And suddenly it's so over.
Yeah.
Then you start the new. But for those 2 weeks before, it's just about the wedding.
That's right.
Well, congratulations, pal.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles.
I'm really, really very proud of you.
Thank you.
Your attendant's choice in men, it's great. It's great. She knows what she's doing. She's. Did I say that right, boss?
Yes. All right, Charles.
Can I have dinner after the show?
Yeah, you can have dinner, but
I get to eat and everything?
Yeah, after everyone else is finished.
Okay, but if I'm really good, can I sit at the table this time?
Yes, Charles.
Okay. Isn't that wonderful, ladies and gentlemen? It shows you he's in a good mood because of the upcoming nuptials. Otherwise, it would go a lot harder with me. No, honestly, I couldn't be prouder, really and truly. Yes, I do.
Okay.
I hate to toast you in coffee.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine. Oh, okay. Here we go.
Long life, many children, and a good time. Just think, eventually we'll have little rugrats running around the studio while we're doing the show.
That's a trip. All right, so as my first job as CEO and president of Tumblr House is to reassure you patrons that you are not going to be spending extra money for time where there's no shows happening.
Yes.
So I'm turning off Patreon, so you guys won't be charged at all. We're joking. I think we're turning it off, I don't know, a month or so. I think we're going to come back in August or ish. I'm not sure your time. Charles didn't mention it, but he's also traveling everywhere. So that, in addition to my crazy schedule, he's also incommunicado.
I'm going to be running around for the first 2 weeks in August. So the 4 weeks of July that I'll be stationary in California, they'll be doing the whole wedding stuff. And then the first 2 weeks in August, I'll be on a book tour in the Northeast, which means, I'll be incommunicado. I will get back to Austria on the 17th. So presumably, whatever the first Saturday is after the 17th, we'll be back in shape.
Okay. So, and I'll turn it on right after we have I'll turn Patreon on right after we have another episode out for you guys. But also, I guess some of the perks of being a patron, where I'm going to add a couple new perks. I've referenced this before, as Marianne is, I know, mentioned, and other things, other people have in comments. But I think I want to finally do the getting rid of books that have little slight defects in them that we can't quite sell. And who better to give them away to than patrons? So I'm going to communicate what books are available. It's all of our best books, right? Because we get them in high volume. One or two of them are defective. It's going to be a couple of Charles's books, Father Ripperger's. We've got, I think, a Bible or two. I think maybe a Knox Bible or two. And so some really high quality books. But you'll have to pay for shipping. $5 on shipping.
Now, there's an important note here, okay? You could get free books or...
free shipping.
What you can't get is...
both.
Absolutely. There are no free rides, ladies and gentlemen.
So, yeah.
But act now while supplies last.
That's right.
Literally true in this case.
I still have to flesh it out, but I will definitely communicate it through Patreon. But yeah, in addition to all of that, we're going to have a clearance sale in the bookstore because I need to clear out a bunch of books. So look for that because I'm going to highlight that as well. Anyhow, I think that's all the announcements that we have. So finally, the questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I went by I don't want to say I'm saddened.
Okay.
I don't want to say I'm saddened. But when I came past the secretarial pool today, I mean, the ladies were all happy to see me, but I could tell they were all a little down.
Yeah?
And you know why?
Why?
Because the most eligible bachelor in the Tumbler House Tower has been officially taken off the market.
Wow.
Do you know how many of those girls' hopes and dreams you've destroyed? Dashed?
They just want a sugar daddy.
So what? That can be love. Oh, I see. When, what's her name? The girl that died in the Bahamas. And her son died before her. What was her name?
Nicole. No, that's
not
OJ's
Nicole
wife.
Brown.
No, not Nicole Brown. Oh, gosh. I don't know.
You know who I mean.
I know exactly you mean. The Dutch guy murdered her.
Yeah.
And yeah, they can't, yeah.
But anyway, he, whatever her name was, her son died before she did. But they asked her what was the sweetest thing her elderly husband said. Not Nicole Kidman. Anyway, what was the sweetest thing your elderly husband ever said to you? And he said, she said, I can't breathe.
Oh, you're talking about Anna Nicole Smith?
That's the one.
Not the one who got murdered.
No.
Yeah, Anna Nicole Smith.
Nicole Smith.
Who now? Yeah, with the ultimate sugar daddy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but see, you're saying Anna Nicole Smith didn't really love him in her way.
Yeah, we've talked about this before.
Yeah, well, she loved him in a sense. All right, let me put it this way. Let's say you own cattle, like the ones grazing on the North 40 of the Tumbler House Tower pasture.
Okay.
All right. Do you love them as individuals, or do you love them for the milk they produce, which you sell and make money off of?
You're misusing the word love. You are using it in a worldly sense.
You think a dairy farmer doesn't love his
cattle?
cattle?
You are not talking about the theological virtue of love.
You say a dairy farmer does not love his cattle?
Yes, he does.
There you go. A kept girl loves her sugar daddy the way a dairy farmer loves his cows.
Well, I'm not going to argue there.
They both milk them.
Great. Yeah, well, that's for sure.
Yeah. See? Love is a many splendored thing.
So then our rulers love us.
Yeah, they do. Love wins.
All you need is love.
That's right, and that's all you're going to get. good and hard. Remember, the Internal Revenue loves you.
All right.
Remember what they said about the National Security Agency?
No, what?
It's the only part of your government that actually listens to you.
Oh. Oh, no. Okay. That's a good one.
All right, what do we got? There must be questions in there somewhere.
Joseph says, seeing as you have been the best man for several weddings.
Speak of the devil.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could outline the ideal best man speech. This will be my second go-around, and I am the best man for a very dear friend whom I go to church with. Any input that our illustrious host Vincent has is also most welcome.
Well, this is funny because 2 weeks from today, I'm going to have to do that very thing.
That's right.
Yeah. And I know what I'm going to say.
I think I know parts of what you're going to say. Yeah.
Only parts. Firstly, you should remember as best man that until you actually deliver the speech, it gives you an opportunity to torture the groom relentlessly. And that's a very important thing for your well-being and sense of selfhood. You know, you wouldn't want your best man to be, shall we say, mentally disabled.
Well, if that's if all of this is the case, then basically I've been practicing receiving a best man speech from you for the entirety of our relationship.
That's a long time. But yeah, it's all been in rehearsal for the great delivery. No, basically, the best man speech. Very often, you don't know the bride nearly as well as you know the groom, and now sometimes that's not true, and if not, great. But if it is, then you're going to have to punt a little bit. Firstly, you have to talk about how you first encountered the groom. Now, a word of warning. You should tease the groom a bit, but always make sure it's tasteful. Never say anything that the bride or the bride's family could take offense at. It's very important. So, you don't want to bring up any bizarre outre adventures you may have had together, no matter how amusing. Because that can actually do a lot of damage. Don't do that. Make your teasing gentle. Make it apropos. Above all, let it give the flavor of your friendship. So that people, in a sense, get an idea of the high regard you hold the groom in. After you've spoken about how you got to know the groom, and maybe said a few things about the relationship you've had with him, then you move on to the bride. Whether you know her well or not, it's time for pure compliments. Nothing but. No jokes at her expense. And that's true even if you know her very well. None. It's their day, but in a very particular way, it's her day. You want to think of yourself as yet another good memory she'll have. That's very, very important. Because I'm going to tell you a little further thing about being a best man in general, because there's more to it than just giving the speech. I realize people don't take it very seriously today, and that's wrong, like so much else. A man doesn't ask you to be the best man unless he has a tremendous regard for you, or very poor taste, but we'll say it's the first one. What he often doesn't realize is that he's given you a sacred task. What's that sacred task? Well, you're going to be witnessing the wedding. And what that means is that where before you could afford to be purely his friend, you have to try to be their friend, and above all, the friend of the union, the friend of the match. And what does that mean concretely? Well, what it means is that if he comes to you a month or a year or a decade later, really annoyed with his bride, instead of saying, yeah, you're right, what does she think she's doing? Which you could do if, you're just his pal. You have to encourage him to stop, take a look back, maybe she's right. Because you have to try to be the friend of the marriage. You have to try to help bring stability and tranquility. If you're to this small degree that you're able to. Because, see, that's the other weird thing about being a best man. It does give you the responsibility of trying to help, but it gives you utterly no control. It ties you to the couple emotionally, but you have no control over what goes on. And it's quite likely you'll end up being godfather to one or more of their children. And that's something you have to think about. And whether or not you aren't, presuming that you maintain your relationship with them down through the years, you'll be uncle, whoever you are, to 2 or 3 or 4 or however many kids. And that's something you have to take seriously. You see, that's part of the problem in our society, ladies and gentlemen, is that we still retain these vestigial roles, but we've emptied them of meaning. And we've had to pay a price for that, and it's a price we're not even conscious of. There was a time when all the institutions of society served to support the family, and that included the extended family, it included friends. I mean, you often hear priests say at weddings, now we're all bound to support them in their marriage. But that's actually true. Literally true. We don't think of it. It just sounds like something priests say at weddings. But once upon a time, it was not simply what someone wished. It was pretty much the way people actually tried to act. Now, mind you, how well they acted in reality as opposed to the ideal is another story. But if you don't have the ideal, you're not going to get anything. If you shoot for the stars, you may hit the horizon. Shoot for the horizon, I promise you'll hit the mud. So, bear all that in mind. And bear in mind, too, that the bride has to become a big part of your dealings with your friend now. And sometimes this can be difficult. Some brides, they just want to purge all the old friends. When that's the case, smile and wave goodbye. Even if the friend wants to somehow sneak around and see you and all, no. Because that would simply add further problems to a union that's probably already got them and doesn't need more. And if you're really his friend, the last thing you want to do is add to that kind of difficulty. Even if, as I say, he wants to keep a relationship with you. If she wants you out of the picture, smile, wave, and go. That doesn't happen all that often, thankfully, but it does sometimes, and you have to be prepared for it. You got to go out of your way to make the bride a friend. That's very important, because, it's not just you and your pal anymore. It's you, your pal, and his wife. And that's the way you just have to look at it. Some wives have no problem at all with you going out with their husband and having a good time, so long as, of course, you don't, as long as she doesn't have to bail you out of jail. Other wives get very insecure about that. You have to basically let her and him set the agenda. You're just along for the ride. It's important to remember. And above all, and I have seen this time and again, if you feel jealous of the bride, and we guys, we're not generally willing to say that's where the antipathy comes from, don't. Your relationship's going to change, No matter how long you've been pals, even from boyhood, she's more important now. And that's the way it should be. If your relationship doesn't change, then there's a problem in that marriage. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Because she should take the position that you formerly had. If she doesn't, then on some level they're not communicating. But again, that's their problem to work out. Just don't add to it. Let me see, anything else I could say here? Always remember their anniversary. Oh yeah, big time. And call your friend, if you can remember, call your friend in the morning to wish him a happy anniversary. You have no idea how many times I've done that, and it saved the groom's skin. It's true.
You do that like 15 times a year?
Oh gosh, no. Maybe 5.
Okay.
I mean, usually you don't need to do that, but I mean, if you know a guy's going to forget,
okay,
you're saving him a bruising.
Yeah, for sure.
If you call him and say, "Hey, Bob, happy anniversary," that's all you have to do. Go, "Oh my God, you're right." Don't press home the advantage.
Yeah.
So you always accuse me of being cruel. I'm not always cruel.
You have your moments.
Of cruelty? Yeah. Very rare.
Yeah, no, we've been wanting Charles to write a book on how to be a best man for a while now. It just hasn't happened because it's expensive, and I mean, Charles wants money, and
it's true.
Tumblr House is so hard up, I mean.
Yeah, I've seen how hard up they are. The executive
we've got a tight budget.
Yeah, a tight budget. They have a tight budget for everything except perks for the executives.
We've been over this time and time again, okay? They are what make everything move.
Who puts gold-plated handles on toilets in the executive men's room? Who does that?
We do that to attract the top talent and to improve morale. What, you want it to work at a dump?
A dump? Gold-plated handles?
Do you want it to
That's insane! That is nuts! How much did that cost you?
It's none of your business, but it sends a message.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it sends a message, all right. It sends a message that them as Gots has, and them as Gots not got nothing. That's the message it sends. Did you know the men's room that I'm allowed to use on the 3rd floor, the handle broke. And I went over to Mr. Syverson, the janitorial person there, with my half of the thing, and I said, "I have never seen a handle break like that." And he laughed, and he said, "Well, I'm not surprised." And I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, to save money, the handles on that floor are all made of processed pulped wood, and over time, they get brittle." Now, who does that?
People who care about the environment. So you don't care. You just want to let loose. Two words, Charles. Carbon footprint. That means nothing to you.
I guess not. What was I thinking? I'm sorry, boss. I'll be good. Don't make me go back in the cage again. Don't make me stare at the wall for an hour. I got tired of it the last time. See, ladies and gentlemen, this is the danger of coming back to work at the tower. The minute you come in these doors, you're in total control. Don't hurt me anymore. Oh, gosh. All right, what else we got?
All right, Cliff asks, what are some print subscriptions that Charles recommends? Does he write for any magazines at this time?
Woof. Well, I write for the European Conservative, which oddly enough is in Europe. Print magazines. Well, I could recommend the New Oxford Review. I could recommend Touchstone. I could recommend The Wanderer, The Remnant. I could recommend Yankee.
Arcadia Weekly,
yeah, I could recommend that. I could recommend Inside the Vatican. I could recommend Catholic World Report. I could recommend. There are a lot of online things that are just expanding these days. The Portal, which, and of course, Massive Ages, I write for them. That's the quarterly of the Latin Mass Society of Great Britain. Catholic Digest, especially the Open Doors feature.
Random side note, I'm going to completely derail all of this. I got Charles his, I think we were talking about this on last episode, but the glazed donuts, Peacock donuts.
Yes.
Yeah, and I got Charles his glazed donuts from Peacock Donuts. They didn't last long. It's interesting because there was a Vietnamese guy there, but he had stacks of an Italian American magazine, or newspaper.
Yeah.
And I said, why do you have your
Holy
Vietnamese,
Angels
right?
people.
Well, he said his landlord. It was the landlord's. Well, I guess maybe the landlord also goes to Holy Angels, but
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow. Anyhow, that just blew my mind because I don't know. It just it seems so random. Like, oh yeah, a donut shop, Italian American magazine, which I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Now you do.
Yeah.
You didn't know there was a Peacock Donuts. I told you. You
That's
didn't
right.
believe me.
I didn't believe you.
No.
I should have believed you.
You should have.
That doesn't mean I need to believe you on everything, but on this matter, I should have believed you.
You should give me the benefit of the doubt always. Have I ever led you astray?
Constantly.
Yes, but in a bad way?
Well, it depends on... Bad way to you? No. Bad way to me? Yes.
You know, your problem is you're such a stickler for form. No, it's true. I'll give you an example. I'll bet you're really into what's called the law of contradiction.
What is that?
Well, something can't be one and many at the same time. Something can't be here and not here.
That's right.
See, that's my point. You're a stickler for form. Now, once you break through the principle of non-contradiction...
How can something be here and not here?
Why not?
No, I just asked you that, and then you retorted with a question. Give me an answer that's not a question.
Okay, sure, by location. The Blessed Sacrament. It's one and many all at the same time. It's all over the world and in time and space.
Not physically.
If you say so.
And we're talking about physical substance.
Yeah.
Okay, you're crazy, but
No,
that'll make for a good episode.
I am accepting.
Accepting of what? Your truth? You're not accepting of my truth.
No, I accept that yours is a portion of the truth.
I want unconditional acceptance of my entire truth.
Wow, so does everybody else. That's why the world's insane. But I accept that too. Because you see, I have the acceptance quotient, the AQ in other words, I have the AQ of a Unitarian minister.
Where'd you get that tested out?
Well, it helps if you go to a Unitarian church and have a good long talk with the minister. Go ahead, ask me a religious question, and I'll respond the way a minister would of that particular faith tradition.
What's your favorite brand of shoes?
Of
Shoes.
shoes. You know, that's a wonderful question. If you think of shoes, both as an historical phenomenon and as a metaphor. Because, I mean, in the one sense, we have the story of St. Paul as a shoemaker, the story of St. Crispin of Changshu, the Chinese shoemaker. And again, by the same token, shoes are such a metaphor. You know, you have St. John the Baptist speaking of Christ not being worthy to tie Christ's shoelaces. And then again, you think of the metaphor of the tying of the shoelaces together and how that symbolizes the inability of an individual to perform his everyday deeds. I believe that there's a rich ocean of metaphor, of simile, that's all bound up with the traditional understanding of what the shoe really is and what it really means. And moreover, I think that individuals of every major faith tradition, as well as, to be honest with you, the minor ones and even of no faith at all, I think all of them in some sense find the shoe is very basic to their understanding of what makes a civilization. Now, I don't mean to say by this that those civilizations, those cultures that traditionally go unshod are wrong, because they too have a very rich tradition, a very rich culture, a way of experiencing reality, which, while unique to them, I think is not without insights that are really, really basic to any complete understanding of that great challenge that is the human condition.
Okay. What's your favorite cryptocurrency?
Cryptocurrency. Well, this is interesting, you see, because here again, you have the whole idea that currency in and of itself is a public thing. We even speak of the common weal, the common good, which is intimately bound up with what we think of as currency. And mind you, this isn't just mere money. You've heard in intelligence that gossip is the currency of the realm, the coin of the realm. This, I mean, there's a sense in which the idea of the medium of exchange, the interaction between peoples, saving in the bank, the notions of thrift, all of these things, I think, are harmoniously tied together, despite the many divisions on the surface.
Understood.
Glad somebody does.
I'm frustrated. I ask such easy questions. It's just...
You will find that my Unitarian minister can take any question you got, swallow it like the blob, and leave it gasping dead on the floor.
I noticed a trend where it seems like, okay, the beginning takes some creativity, but then the further down it gets, it sort of just all melds together.
In this blob of meaninglessness. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That was actually really impressive. That's one of your... Again, I've said this before, but... Oh, man, you must have listened to a lot of that over...
Oh, God, yes. And you know, the funny thing, I'll tell you a true story. You see, ladies and gentlemen, in order to try to shorten the length of our too long shows, the air conditioning has been turned off here at the studio. That's a way of keeping us moving. And the only thing I'll say for the boss here is that he's willing to put himself through the same torture. So, but where was I? Yes. So, I'm a great believer that Unitarianism is one of the major underlying pins of the American psyche, alongside Calvinism, Anglicanism, Freemasonry, and various other goodies. And so I believe that if you want to teach would-be evangelists of the United States about the American mind, they really have to get to know Unitarianism. I firmly believe that. That's not a joke. When you consider that Thomas Jefferson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, who were held up to us as the great mentors of the American mind, they were all Unitarians. So it's important, I think, to grasp our mental underpinning, that we grasp Unitarianism.
Okay, that leads me to a great question.
Yeah.
Where does Unitarianism end and Freemasonry begin, or vice versa?
Well, that's a very good question, and you know, it's not one I can really answer properly. In other words, I can give you a structural answer.
Yeah.
In terms of the organizations, but in terms of the principle,
yeah,
huge overlap.
Because I've always said Freemasonry is the state church, church. But then what you just said, it's like, well, is Unitarianism the state church?
It all, let's put it this way, from different historical origins, different streams flowing into the same delicious lake, or sewer, as the case may be. Because basically, remember that Freemasonry and Unitarianism arose around the same time in England. And they all are the products of the decay of Calvinism.
Unitarianism is as old as Freemasonry?
No, it goes back to the, well, not quite. It goes back to the, more or less, 1600s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But mind you, its origins, the first Unitarian communities, the way we know them today, actually arose in Transylvania.
Were they as loosey-goosey as they are now?
Not initially, no, but they became that way.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why I say they had different structural origins.
Yeah.
Unitarianism arose independently in Great Britain out of Calvinism, out of English Congregationalism, as it did in New England. Because as in Hungary, as in the Netherlands with the Remonstrants, and so in New England and Old England, Calvinism, when it burns out, produces Unitarianism.
Interesting.
Yep. Mind you, I could try to come up with some rule why that would be. I don't know, really. It's just an historical reality. I guess the excess, on the one hand, when it's revolted against, it goes to the other direction.
Okay, so then when Unitarianism burns out, that goes to agnosticism and atheism.
Well, ultimately,
What happens when agnosticism or atheism burns out?
it goes to hell.
That was a good one. That's good.
At any rate, I'll just make one point here, and that is that, as I say, to really understand America, I think you've got to understand Unitarianism. And in that light, I brought a group of seminarians to meet in Boston to meet a Unitarian minister at the Theodore Parker Church in Somerville, Massachusetts. And I have to tell you, the meeting was everything I'd hoped it would be. You see, I actually can tell you everything about Unitarianism, but it always turns into a joke with me because I can't take it seriously.
Yeah.
So I knew they needed to hear about it from someone who believed it. Well, maybe belief is the wrong term, but at least someone who was paid for doing it. And this wonderful man was everything I could have hoped for. It was just great. And the kids asked questions the way you just did of me, and every one of them.
Really?
Yep. It was beautiful to watch. And the looks on their faces, because every one of them, being seminarians, and knowing their St. Thomas and all this kind of thought, they figured, they'd really zero in on this guy shooting at the blob. And I was just sitting there smiling, watching their increasingly frustrated faces. It was really perfect.
Wow, a teaching moment. That's so you. Where it's like, well, I'm doing a function, but then I'm also getting a little something on the side. I just get to watch this play out.
In the immortal words of Fairy Hardcastle, in That Hideous Strength, this sort of dykish torture chick,
yeah.
She said when the deputy director lectured her on enjoying her job, she said, "You'll find that nobody can do this kind of work unless they get something out of it."
There it is.
There it is indeed. So finally, and this is the supreme moment, ladies and gentlemen, one of the kids is just so totally frustrated. He goes, "Reverend, do you have any kind of belief in any sort of objective spiritual reality at all?" And his reaction, perfect. He goes like this. Remember, he wore glasses, of course. And he had a mane of gray hair, as I do now. He went like this.
Stupid.
That is a serious question with which I have wrestled for a very long time. I know, it was just great.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It was great.
Wow.
The funny thing, I was at the Unitarian Universalist house on Beacon Street in Boston buying some Unitarian material. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to break the news, but I know a lot about a lot of weird religions. It's true. So I picked up a series of books, the Communion book, the Easter book, the Christmas book, which are all about Unitarian, the East May traditions. There are a couple of others, basically about Unitarian liturgy.
Yeah.
And the lady at the cash register grinned at me ear to ear, and she goes, "Oh, are you are you buying this for inspiration?" And I said, "No, material."
Wow.
And she smiled at me again, sort of neurotically, and that was it.
All right.
You know the three things every Unitarian has to believe in?
What?
The fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, and the neighborhood of Boston.
Oh, wow.
I told you about the wealthy Unitarian lady in Boston who was asked why she couldn't, her response when she was asked why she couldn't accept the divinity of Christ.
What?
"I cannot believe in a God who would name his only begotten son after my gardener."
Oh.
Heard how the Ku Klux Klan drove the Unitarian family out of the neighborhood?
Why?
Burned a question mark on their lawn.
All right.
You know what you get when you cross the Unitarian with a Jehovah's Witness?
What?
Someone who rings your doorbell for no real reason. Hi?
All right, moving on. Brian says, Dear Charles, thank you for your discussion of the tragic story of Marshal Pétain.
Yeah.
Are there any pro-Vichy books out there? Preferably in English, although French might be fine as I am endeavoring to learn the language.
Well, you know, the biggest, there's a website, which is now only available on Internet Archive. There's a Society for the Defense and the Memory of Marshal Pétain. And they had a very extensive website, which is now only on, I just said it.
Archives.org, what?
Yeah, yes, archives.org, but it's the Wayback Machine.
Oh, the Wayback Machine, yeah.
The other place where you can find a lot of stuff about Pétain is the writings of the Abbé de Nantes, which you'll find in something called the Contre-Réforme de la 20e siècle, which is Contre-Réforme, XXE siècle.
Okay.
There you'll find a lot of, because you see, part of the Pétain's program was this youth program, and the Abbé de Nantes was a member of it. So he waxes very, very lyrical over it. It's important to remember that the ideology of the Vichy state, at least while it was independent from German influence, was the so-called Révolution Nationale. And it's amazing how much of their economic policies were nicked by the Fourth Republic after the war.
Yeah. All right, Joe D. says, how can one increase in the virtue of courage?
By being brave. I know how that sounds, but if you want to increase in any courage, in any virtue, you pray hard for it, and then you just try to do it. You know? If, like myself, you're lazy, you try to force yourself to do things. If you're brusque and rough with people, you've got to force yourself to try to be diplomatic. If you're overly diplomatic, you've got to the point perhaps even of lying, you've got to try to force yourself to be direct. And the more you do it, the more you'll succeed. And the more you succeed in exercising a virtue, the more you'll have it. It's just the nature of things. Patience is an example. Of course, my French grandmother used to say, patience is a virtue practiced by few and acquired by none. And there's the old joke, oh Lord, give me patience, but not just yet.
Right, a lot of stuff from Dwarf of Alexandria. He says, howdy, thank you for including several of my questions on the shows recently. Before I ask my next question, I'd like to share an anecdote Tumblr House is involved in. I recently received an inclination to order some copies of Secret of the Rosary and the Catholic Church Has the Answer to carry in case I encounter opportunities for evangelization. My Tumblr House order arrived on the day before I left, likely within 12 hours of me leaving, for a day trip with some relatives, and once we had begun the drive, one of them asked me to explain what the difference between their church and the Catholic Church is, and whether they needed to become Catholic. We had time to go through the 7 sacraments during the car ride, and he and his wife were of good will and appeared to accept much of the church's teaching. At the end of the day, I remembered I had those books I had ordered and was able to give them to these family members as I departed. And they were very happy to receive them. It was a special moment, so thank you, Vincent and Tumblr House, for facilitating it. Now for my question. I'm discerning a vocation to the priesthood and or religious life. While I know this isn't a reason to pursue either of these states in life, I'm drawn to the subject of economics within Catholic social teaching, and have a background in finance that has helped me to understand and think of tangible and realistic applications of principles laid out by Pope Leo XIII and Father Pesch for instance. Are there any groups within which this field of study might be intentionally encouraged, or is it likely something that would need to be done on one's own accord? Also, if there are any traditional orders of religious or priestly fraternities in general that you two particularly admire and would recommend investigating, please share.
Say that last bit again.
Are there any traditional orders of religious or priestly fraternities in general that you two particularly admire and would recommend investigating?
Well, yeah. The Fraternity of St. Peter, the Miles Christi, I've got blank. The Canons of Christ the King. The Institute of Christ the King.
ICKSP?
Yes,
Yeah.
ICRSP or whatever it is.
ICK, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, the Western Province of the Dominicans of the United States are pretty good. There are others. It's funny. I feel like a deer caught in the headlights. A number of the burgeoning supply of oratories. Brompton and Birmingham in England, Oxford, Toronto in Canada, Cardiff in Wales. There are a lot more. Manchester. There are several in the United States. The Norbertines in California.
I was waiting for that one. Otherwise, I was going to do something. No, because obviously we're very close to the Norbertines.
Yeah. Not that there's a huge rush for them, but the Anglican Ordinarians, of which I'm canonically a member, no longer a subject of His Grace the Archbishop of L.A.
Is that all you did it for?
No, I did it to support the Ordinarians.
That was just a little... Okay.
No, I mean, gosh, what would make you think that after all those years under Cardinal Mahoney and before him Cardinal Manning, that I would associate the Archdiocese with terrible memories? Why would you even think that?
Sorry, Charles.
Well, I mean, in this bastion of goodness and light, how could I have a bad memory? See? Yeah, I got you there, smart guy.
I think you're blinded by the light.
Ooh, blinded by the light. Yes, that's me, all right. No, there was the question before that.
He's into economics. He says, are there any groups within which this field of study might be intentionally encouraged, or is it likely something that would need to be done on one's own accord?
By groups, does he mean lay or
I don't know.
Well, I can tell you there are all sorts of groups online.
With the context of Catholic social teaching.
Yeah, there are all sorts of groups online that talk about promoting the social reign of Christ the King and things like that. There was this conference in D.C. recently that several of my friends attended. I think it's called the Civitas Institute or something. They've got a lot of these things running around, actually.
Right. Final question for the pre-show is from Adrian, who says, "Greetings, Don Vincenzo, the book magnate Franchini, and Mr. Charles Coulombe. In light of the recent arson of Catholic churches in Canada, will Charles please share his thoughts on the matter? All I know about it is the few snippets I've read about it in the mainstream media, and I already know they are lying, so I'd like Charles to share a bit of his knowledge on the subject."
All right, well, basically, the alleged cause célèbre to touch all this stuff off were in what were called the residence schools in Western Canada, which were schools run, paid for by the Canadian government in the, I guess, from the 1890s or something into the 60s, 70s. These were residential schools for Indian children, very similar to what we had in the United States, except here they were generally government run without church intervention. And they were, a lot of Indian children went, a lot of them died. And now they say they were buried in unmarked graves, and it's very upsetting, and weren't they abused, and so forth. And they were taken from their parents, and so on and so forth. Well, there's several things you've got to bear in mind. That's the supposed cause. We'll get on to the church burnings in a minute. But like the Magdalene houses in Ireland, which started out with everybody jumping up and down, and now has become a non-story, partly because it was, the church was smacked around the head and shoulders with this blunt instrument in Ireland for a year or two or three or four. And eventually the truth turned out to be not nearly so horrific as was portrayed, but by then the damage was done, so the weapon was no longer needed.
Where is the person there to ask for the apology?
What, in Ireland?
Yeah.
Well, see, this is a funny thing. The hierarchy in Ireland are guilty of many terrible things, but not that. Because the modeling schools, I mean, there were problems with them. But, have you looked at our foster system?
Yeah.
See, nobody says anything. Kids just go into it, they get ruined for life, they get turned out on the street, and they end up homeless or in jail. But this isn't a problem. And nobody points to the governors or presidents or mayors and say, they need to be beaten up. We've got to burn every city hall and every county courthouse because of the abuse in the foster system. Burn them all! Why not? I wouldn't mind that.
No, I meant for the bishops of the church in Ireland to go on the attack and say, you just besmirched our reputation, you need to apologize.
Well, that would be hard, because firstly, they have no spines anyway.
Oh, okay.
See, when you're a jellyfish, I mean, look, these are people who won't stand up for the unborn or the rights of marriage.
But they like money.
It's not enough.
Money's not enough?
What, to make a brave man out of a coward? No.
Wow. I guess so.
Otherwise, pickpockets would suddenly be brave men.
Wow.
Embezzlers would proudly say, well, one of your people would come into you and say, hey, boss, any idea how much I embezzled out of you last year? You idiot.
Wow.
I funneled millions out of this company into my personal accounts in Switzerland and the Caymans. You're never going to get your grubby hands back on it. And I'll tell you what, all those sick days I took, I was playing tennis.
Okay.
Get it?
I get it.
Do you think anybody would ever actually come to you with that kind of I wouldn't even call it an admission, that boast?
I guess not. But I feel like it's demanding for an apology is sort of like a coercive tactic.
Well, it is. And if they had guts and brains and faith, then they'd make mincemeat of their opponents.
Yeah.
But they don't. I mean, look, as I say, you take, I mean, I'll give you an example. In the state, the church wasted its time fighting against getting rid of the statute of limitations on on abuse cases in private businesses. Absolutely the wrong tactic. Had it been given to me, I know what I would have said.
What?
We favor this law only to include public institutions. No exceptions. No protection for pedos. It doesn't matter if they're working for the government. It doesn't matter if the payment has to come out of government coffers. No exceptions. Let me tell you, the bill would have died in committee. Because there's no vision, there's no guts, there's no leadership, because there's no faith. What if Joan of Arc hadn't believed in her voices? Would she have suffered herself to be burned?
That's very true.
No. You don't get martyrs to nothing.
I don't know. I mean, but it's so far in a certain direction, though. It's like, maybe we should have more safeguards against pederasts. And sort of, I mean, if, as you say, these bishops, they just care about money. So obviously they don't care about weeding out pederasts for spiritual reasons or the good of the community. But how about for money?
Again,
it doesn't take a hero to do that.
No, it takes a smart person.
So, I mean, these guys, they're not even smart in a worldly way.
No.
I mean...
Stop and think for a second. Take our own beloved Cardinal Mahoney. His stonewalling on the records was the stupidest thing possible from his own point of view. If he'd have been smart, he'd have realized, or if his legal counsel had been smart, they would have realized that sooner or later, eventually, they were going to be forced to release those things.
Yeah.
So if they had simply dumped them immediately, the opprobrium would have been gone. If they'd owned up to it.
I don't understand. On what basis is a priest made a bishop and a bishop made an archbishop?
The Holy Ghost chooses them.
Don't ever say that again. Don't ever say that. That's just too much.
I've actually had people say that to me, ladies and gentlemen. That's what he's getting. Whenever they need a new bishop, they leave a plate of cookies and a glass of milk on the back stoop at the Vatican. And in the morning, the cookies are gone, the glass of milk's empty, and the name of the bishop is written there.
I mean, that's on the exact same level as Newsom saying science is guiding us.
There you go. Science guides the choices of the bishops.
I'm following science, people.
Believe the science.
I am not anathema. Well, that's a Freudian slip. I'm sorry. I am immune. I am.
Believe the science.
Believe the science.
Believe the science.
Yeah.
No, they're chosen in various ways. Basically, the standard is this. Let's say you've got a diocese where there's going to be a vacancy.
Okay.
The nuncio of the country solicits the opinions of various people in the diocese. Yeah. The bishop, the sitting bishop, the priest's council, anybody he knows.
Yeah.
And then he comes up with a list of 4 or 5 names, and he submits them to the Holy Father. Now, the Holy Father chooses one from that list.
I mean, so on what basis is the list created?
Well, that, you see, depends on the nuncio.
You're just kicking the can down the road.
I know that.
Okay. What you're basically doing is you're doing the Unitarian version. Like I'm basically shooting a blob.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. So
what happens is that again, you've got to bear in mind that just as in the army and in a lot of other institutions in life, the corporate mode of governance has taken hold. Because the church reflects the world in every age in the sense that it reflects the power structure. In the modern world, the corporation
But corporations can be molded to operate on an efficient
and they can
level.
also be successful. But remember that the goal of the corporation is simply to make money and reproduce itself. But when you look at an institution like the church or the army, which presumably has something, salvation of souls on one hand, selfless defense of the fatherland on the other, that is beyond what any corporation is intended to do, that mode of governance doesn't work very well. It just doesn't. It can't. But nevertheless, the people at the top are imbued with this idea, and hell or high water, they do it. So, what is it that constitutes? I mean, if you ask what constitutes in the eyes of the people on top a good bishop, you have to ask then what constitutes a good priest, because it's from their ranks that the bishops get raised. Now, since the policymakers of the church do not believe in the necessity of the church and her sacraments for salvation, this completely alters their way of looking at the whole thing. Then the effective priest becomes the effective administrator. This is what I mean by the corporate model.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Well, you'll give me a man who can make his parish profitable and always turn in his diocesan tribute every year, and doesn't cause any outward trouble, doesn't rock the boat, then guess what? Good candidate for bishop. Now, If the diocese, however, is in the hands of a cabal of, shall we say, morally questionable clerics, that will be an added requirement. And the list that the nuncio gets will have 5 people who are...
I see.
I mean, how think of Cardinal McCarrick.
No. All right.
All right, fine. Think of Cardinal McCarrick in deep, gruesome detail.
Okay, this has been an awesome pre-show. I've been enjoying this a lot. I'm sure everybody's really been enjoying this. We've really been on a roll, talking about things that aren't even asked.
You know I'm on a roll.
Because you're a piece of meat, or what?
2 glazed donuts.
2 glazed donuts.
Before the show.
Yeah, that's right.
I had 2 glazed donuts from the supposedly non-existent Peacock Bakery, I'll tell you.
Yeah, because I'm a benevolent dictator.
Yes, you are. But now you believe in the Peacock Bakery.
I do believe.
You didn't believe in it.
No.
You said you're lying. You made that up.
That was stupid of me.
It was. But you're forgiven.
All right.
And they were good, ladies and gentlemen. He was amazed at how I wolfed them down, but they were my first glazed donuts in a year and a half. That's my defense.
I've seen Charles eat a lot of donuts over the years. I'd never seen him eat donuts like that before. I had to catch myself, and I was like, wow, you are wolfing those down, Charles.
Oh, they did not have a chance. Please don't eat us. So shut up.
But, so Adrian doesn't beat us up. We didn't actually answer his, or you didn't answer his last part, which is the bad part of the Canada thing.
The bad part of the which?
The bad part of the Canada question, which is the arson.
Oh, yes. Well, the resident schools thing, to go back to that, we went pretty far afield, didn't we? The resident...
That's okay. They like that.
The resident schools, then, we're Anglican as well as Catholic. Though notice the Catholic Church has been pulled out for abuse. Again, very typical. I'm sure there were abuses of some kind. The high mortality rate among the children was also mirrored in the high mortality rate amongst the general population. Remember, the childhood diseases of those days would go through institutions like that. I mean, things that we've never heard of today, like diphtheria, would go through an institution of children, like a knife through butter. And when they died, because the church didn't have a great deal of money, they would get wooden headstones, wooden crosses, and so on. Those don't last. But the other thing, too, is that the government was supposed to exercise some sort of oversight. So if the Catholic and Anglican churches were not doing their job, the government should have been watching. So you'd have to say that both church and state failed if everything was as awful as they say it is. So we had several different ifs here. But you know what? Even if everything was as bad as they say, how does that justify burning Catholic churches now, smart people? And you know, my little munchkins, the Indians themselves, now I'm not going to say First Nations or Native Americans, you say that on the res and you'll get your head handed to you. The Indians themselves have condemned this. My suspicion is you've got a lot of white Antifa types going on reservations and so forth and doing the burning. And now it's spread to the cities. Church was attacked in Vancouver last night, Vancouver, BC. The only thing I can say is, and of course, Justine Trudeau, the Prime Ministerette of Canada, she's keeping her trap shut. The worthless daughter of a worthless father and mother. That's Justine Trudeau. But, and I mean that in a nice way, in a non-judgmental way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everyone's being silent about it. No one's condemning it. The RCMP, it's suspicious. I'll tell you what, in this, so far, and I hate to say this because I have a huge amount of respect for the Mounties, But so far, right now, they look more like the Keystone Cops, or perhaps the Great Dudley Do-Right, than they do like proper Mounties. Please prove me wrong. You know, give us a touch of that due south wisdom, and not this drivel. That having been said, the bishops, of course, have been worse than useless, but they've been worse than useless about everything. So why should they suddenly, grow a pair? I think it's interesting that this is happening on the immediate aftermath of the Knights of Columbus being forbidden to draw their swords in so many dioceses, and now the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre getting rid of the use of the sword in the investiture ceremony. This'll do. This is how you should resist. Well, no. Flailing around ineffectually, my ladies, is not going to do it. My advice is that every parish that feels itself in danger needs to get its men together, particularly its Knights of Columbus Council, if it has one, and form a neighborhood watch and defend the place. And when the little morons come to call, they need to be sent home with their tails between their legs, possibly spanked, and then given a good supper and sent back to mommy and daddy with a reprimand. Obviously, no one else is going to do the job. The most charitable thing I can say for the Mounties is that they probably don't have the manpower. I don't know what tribal police are like in the reserves in Canada. So you've got to look after your own when no one else will. I'm reminded of the Know Nothing riots in the United States, where they were hanging Catholics from lampposts in places like Philadelphia and Boston and Charleston back in the 1830s and 40s. And so happened that when these things were at their height, the mayor of New York was a Know Nothing. Well, the Bishop of New York was Bishop John Hughes, who had the wonderful nickname of Dagger John. So-called partly because when he would write his name with the cross before it, it looked like a dagger.
Yeah.
And partly because of his quiet, contemplative, and unassertive personality.
Yeah.
But when all this stuff was happening in Philadelphia and Charleston and so on, he went to go see the Know Nothing mayor. And he expressed the wish that nothing of this sort would happen in New York. So the mayor smirked at it. And he said, you're afraid for your churches, aren't you? And the bishop smiled back and said, oh, no, Your Honor, I'm afraid for your city, because if a single Catholic life is lost or Catholic property burned, we will burn this place to the ground and make of it another Moscow, and Your Honor will be responsible. And nothing happened in New York. So hard to understand. I don't get it. Oh, no. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when bullies get their faces punched to the ground, they stop being bullies. That's a little basic thing I learned on the schoolyard. It's like that the book by the Unitarian Minister. Everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten.
Wow.
Well, it's true. And that is the real truth. The bully who's kicked to the ground, his face smacked against the wall, stops bullying. It's very strange. I will never forget the look when I was at Virgin Junior High many, many years ago, and a gang member invited me to pay him protection every day. Well, this was a problem. I couldn't fight him because I didn't belong to a gang. And if I fought him, even if I won, I wouldn't win. Because my life would, I can't even imagine what it would be like. So my dad advised me to hire a member of another gang to take care of the chap when he would come and demand money from it. I did. So the guy came up and he demanded a buck from me as the beginning of his daily tribute. And I said no. And then the other fellow came, who was much taller than he was, grabbed him and started pulling him away where he did him a lot of damage behind a building. I didn't see it, but I saw the aftermath. But I'll never forget the look on that guy's face as he suddenly realized the whole situation had changed. See, he was going to be beating up somebody. And maybe even getting some money out. He had this really triumphant look on his face. In seconds, as the realization dawned on him that this wasn't going the way it was supposed to go, that instead of wielding violence and feeling and giving out pain, he was going to be on the receiving end. I don't think I'll ever forget that look on his face. The whole scenario changed. It was a look I'll never forget. And I'm sorry to say it's a look that fills me with joy to this very day. Those who live by the sword shall die by it.
And that's sort of a paradox in a sense that you illustrate, which is that bullies are actually cowards.
Yeah, of course they are. You see, it really isn't necessary that you beat them to a pulp. What's necessary is that you give them a show of force that you're willing to use. And most of the time they'll slink away. Unfortunately, the other gentleman, I really could not explain the notions of proportionate response to.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
I couldn't say, just keep him away. He understood. Of course, the other thing, too, is that he belonged to another gang.
Yeah.
So he understood on a certain level that it was beyond me, the dynamics of the situation in a better way than I could. And, of course, he knew that he would get jumped and thumped himself, but it was worth it to him. Financially.
Yeah.
So.
We are on a roll in the pre-show, so...
He took the lump, so he got the bump.
Okay.
And he knew it was going to happen. And, he had no bitterness. That was the amazing. Well, I visited him after the other guy's gang got to him. So I visited him later after he was, in the midst of recovering. And I said, I'm really sorry this happened to you. And he said, don't be. I knew this was going to happen. I knew it when I took your money. But that was the deal.
Yeah.
He said, I'll tell you what, I never would have seen that kind of money any other way. It was 15 big ones.
Wow.
Which in 1972 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
He said, I want you to see that any other way. They beat me up. I barely feel it now, and I still got the money.
Paying priests and gang members to do what you want them to do.
Well, they won't do it for free. I mean, what? How did you think life worked? You should be the last person I'd have to tell about this.
That's true.
I mean,
Yeah, you gotta... Okay.
And by the way, you notice when I got you your bootleg confession last year, I didn't have to pay the priest, and neither did you. So...
I ended up paying the priest.
Yeah, but he would have done it for free.
That's right.
You did it for a
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you always have to feel that you have to pay priests. Why don't you just find good priests?
I did, and you did, but he would have done it without any offer of money.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't offer him anything.
Yeah.
And he certainly didn't ask me, is he going to pay up or what?
That would be something.
Yeah, no, it was not even a question. That didn't even enter the thing.
Yeah.
Although it did start me on my life of crime during the worst of the lockdown as a purveyor of bootleg confessions and Eucharists.
Yeah, big time.
Psst, psst. Hey, pal. Got a mortal sin on your conscience? We can help you out. Got a priest who's all over there. If you got the sincerity, he got the time.
Did you really just create that?
Just a second.
There's no way. You've got the sincerity.
Yeah, you got the sincere contrition. He's willing to absolve you. That's right, pal. Right over there.
Oh,
watch all your sins vanish away. As long as you're sincerely contrite, he's willing to do it. That's right.
Wow.
Contrition in a time of plague.
I think for some reason that made me think of Love in the Time of Cholera.
Well, that's what inspired it.
Okay.
That's exactly what inspired the thought. Love in the time of cholera.
Oh, man.
Contrition in the time of plague.
Oh, wow.
There were few people to be seen in the streets that day, except here and there what's the word? A reclusive penitent looking for a hidden priest. Other than that, the streets were empty.
Wow.
Contrition in a time of plague.
All right, this has been one of the best pre-shows ever, if not the best pre-show, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I don't even want this pre-show to end. I was going to write down stuff and just like do this forever, but
we got to move on. But I neglected to compliment you all on your finery. You know, they look like they're here for New Year's Eve, but it's the 200th show.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I like the white tie tails, the ladies and gowns. I like this.
Yeah.
Well, stay in those plush seats, ladies and gentlemen, popping the chicken a la king filled penny fours, and we will see you in the real show.